Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 282 of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Ryan Stitch Nixon of Stitch's Loft. He is a friend we go back 15 years, Ryan, all the way back to the first PropWorks auctions in Seattle. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. How you doing,
Man,
Dave?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
How,
Kind of, I don't know. My voice is a little off today, so not good timing, but we'll make it work.
we'll make it work. Absolutely. How um, long have you been a fan um, of this show that we have all rallied around for decades after its completion? How far do the two of you go back?
Wow. Well, it would have been
And by the
2000.
way, you're seeing Ryan peeking behind Ryan here on the
Oh, yeah,
screen.
there's me. So no copyright infringement there. That is my photograph, and sorry, Dean, but it was my camera. So
Yeah, I'm sure he's got one.
yeah, he did. I took one right after. So we traded cameras.
But
Uh,
you and Stargate.
Yeah, 2005.
Okay.
I was, active duty in the Navy in Atlanta, and I got the flu, and I was in bed and sleeping way too much, and couldn't couldn't sleep anymore. And I ended
Okay.
up turn on Sci-Fi Channel, and I saw it, and then I mentioned it to a couple of people, and they're like, "Oh, you've never watched that? I thought for sure you'd be all into that." And I'm like, I hadn't seen. I didn't have Showtime, so I didn't have like.
So you were aware of it, but you'd not watched it.
Yeah, I think I was slightly aware of it, but I just never watched it, so I hadn't gotten into it. And then, man, I dove both feet, and within a month, I was on sgcommand.net and talking to Dan Kim and Dean and all these people, and then Dragon Con was coming. Like I had like a month to get ready, and
So
hit the
these are like
ground.
the costume circles and the prop circles.
Yep, and I hit the ground running and started going up through the ranks, and it was just history from there.
Wow. Okay. What is it that grips you about this franchise? What is it that keeps you coming back? Not just Amanda Tapping, right?
Right. Um, I think really it was the realism. At that point, I had been in the Navy since 1990, so I was pretty deep into my career at that point, and really how much they got right. It just even from early on in my career, 91, I was working with the Air Force. We were doing joint drug interdictions in Panama and some of the Caribbean areas, and I was working so closely with the Air Force. I learned a lot about them, and we can talk about some of that stuff later. But I literally became almost a translator later in my career because I had worked with the Air Force so much in early in my career. Then later in '99, when I was overseas in the sandbox and we were patrolling the no-fly zone, northern southern Iraq, um, the Air Force had got rid of the F-111, so the EA-6Bs for the Navy had to pick up the role. So at that point, these Navy
These
squadrons,
are planes.
yeah,
Okay.
and these
Okay.
Navy
Translate for the
squadrons
layman's folks.
yeah, the prowlers, the Navy had to pick up this whole job for the Air Force. So at this point, we are now working for them. So it's a whole different lingo. Yeah, it's the military, but the Marines don't talk the same as the Navy. We can communicate, but you start getting into the Air Force and the Army and these other branches. Everybody's got their own jargon. So
For
I
sure.
I literally met this E8, and he was like asking me all these questions, and he knew the answers. And he's like, "How do you know all this stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, I worked with you guys a lot early in my career. I just learned it." And so I love the realism. To get back to your question, it was so accurate, And then when I found out they did have all these, consultants and helping, I just really resonated with that.
Very cool. I really think that the costuming side of Stargate is something that is not covered a lot in fandom, and there's quite a few of you. Even when we went to San Diego Comic-Con this year, there were several folks walking around in full garb. And I think that it's a thriving community overall, not as much as it used to be, obviously, because it's a show that's not on the air right now. But I think that there's a lot there, and fortunately, it's one of, I suspect, the easier shows to do because you can actually go to a military supply store to get started.
Well, I think that's the tough part, because we always joke that the newbies look like they rolled off the army supply truck, but probably
They don't look like they've come through the Stargate on a couple of missions. Need to put some dust and dirt on them.
Some of them are a little rough. You get into the Star Wars things, you start talking about bathrobe Jedis and stuff like that. So it's just, but hey, everybody starts at, maybe you can find that old picture of Paul and I. Mine was rough. Mine was really rough in 2005. But that was the thing, we worked together, and being a PR in the Navy, parachute rigger, official titles, aircrew survival equipment, and that was kind of my niche, because I worked on all the flight equipment. So especially when it came to like the F-302s and, that type of stuff, I knew exactly what they were wearing. I could tell you the exact nomenclature of the G suit or whatever. And that stuff was really easy for me. So it was easy for me to identify that, what pair of boots, those were Magnums, or those were, Danners or whatever. And then probably the peak, 05 to probably 08 was probably the peak costuming time for us.
Okay.
About 07, when Atlantis took off and everything, it really blew up. There was hundreds of us across the world.
That's
really.
so cool. All
Thousands.
right. How did you decide to start? I assume Stitch is your moniker from Battlestar Galactica. Is that correct, or was that taken from? No, that's not. Where does this come from? And how did you start off Stitch's Loft?
Well, it came from a nickname. I don't know how family friendly we want to, but in the Navy,
Very family friendly.
in the Navy, there was a derogatory term, Stitch, followed with the B word.
Oh,
Because all the other maintainers, they're out on the hot flight line turning wrenches, and we're inside sitting by the air conditioner sewing half the time. So
okay.
That was always a derogatory term, so I just kind of flipped the script on it, and I was like, well, I work in the Loft. That's where all the work is done. So I took Stitch's Loft, and I was making my own loft, and I made it possessive with the apostrophe S. That doesn't work with, debit cards and stuff so well, but I've made it work. So.
Yeah, they don't like those special characters.
A buddy of mine came up with this logo for me, and he took my actual naval symbol and kind of put it on a tilt, and
Paratrooper.
So it worked out, and I just ran with it. But yeah, I started dabbling in 07. I started making, my first prop was the headset for Atlantis, because I wanted something that resembled it. And once I saw the real ones, that they were just so uncomfortable, and just most of the actors that I talked to, they hated them. They absolutely hated them, and they started out really long. And
you're talking about the earpieces?
Yeah, and they were casting a shadow, and then they're post-production, they're trying to take the shadow out, so they started shortening them, and then Joe's got one that's like an inch and a half long.
They don't need to be long.
No,
they're just aesthetic.
But they hurt. The original prop, they really hurt, and I came up with something better, and everybody loved them, and my reviews go all the way back to 2007 on those. But I didn't start my business till 2011.
Oh, okay. How many people have you? How many clients have you had?
I don't know exactly. I'm well into probably 3,700 orders at this point. So
all Stargate, mostly Stargate.
Mostly, I would say 85-90%.
Wow. Jeez, man.
So, you know,
Has
they're
it
well
has
over
it
3,000, I would say, you know, so.
as we move forward, has it wound down as we get further away from the shows, or has it stayed steady?
Well, COVID really threw a wrench into everything. That
Can't
was
imagine
tough.
why.
I took a 58% loss the first year
Okay.
on that. And 2019 was my best year because I had done Captain Marvel and some other stuff. So I
Okay.
had some other things blowing up. So, but you know, it kept me really busy. But it was tough. It was definitely tough.
So,
It fluctuates.
is your specialty screen accurate costumes tailored to the individual user? Is that what it is that you do?
For the most part, I call myself a prop and costume consultant because that's what I've actually done on the real movies and sets. I'm not union, you know, but I still work with the crew, and I'm a paid consultant basically. So when you're coming to me as just a fan or a costumer, then you're paying me to be your consultant. So we look at your budget, we look at what, you know, ideas you're having. And it's tough because some people don't, you know, if they just buy something off Etsy or eBay, they don't realize how hands-on I am with stuff. I want to know what are you doing? What's your vision? What's your passion? You know, is this just a one-time Halloween costume, or is this, you know, you're pouring some money into this? Because I want to be able to, you know, it's never been about me just getting rich or making a buck. It's always
No.
been about keeping fandom alive and, you know, doing the best job for a customer that I can. And that's where that's where I get my pride from.
Absolutely. Well, you're a real fan, you know, and this it's like me with this, you know, this whole project is a labor of love far more than anything else. I'm lucky with advertising dollars, but that's where it stops. I'm never going to take money from anyone otherwise. But you're providing a product, you know, you're providing something tangible, and that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. So this is really cool, man. Let me see here. I want to talk about your experience with Amanda Tapping. Can you tell this story?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Started out mostly as a joke. I was I had a similar wallpaper on my computer in the Navy, obviously before this was taken. It was just one of those that everybody had that was floating around on the internet. And it was early 2006, and one of the guys from a squadron came in, and I was sitting there literally with my feet up on the desk. He saw my wallpaper on my computer. He goes, "You're such a geek." And I was like, "Why?" And I said, "Dude," I said, "I'm going to be standing in that room." I said, in a couple months, because I was already planning on going to the convention. And he's like, "Whatever," you know, and he kind of walked out. And
Ugh. The normies love placing us in a box.
oh yeah,
It's the
yeah,
only way that they can deal with us. So.
yeah. So he was like, "Whatever," you know, and he left. I don't know why my green screen's phasing out here.
The light's getting really bright.
Yeah, well, the sun keeps changing.
There's your answer. No, keep telling your story.
With the window. Um, so he leaves, and I'm sitting there just kind of brainstorming, and one of the guys that worked for me, and he's like, "Are you really gonna get to see all that?" And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "We get to tour the set and all." You know, I had already got my passport to go to Canada, paid the money for the tickets. You know, I was getting everything done, and he's like, "Well, aren't you transferred? Aren't you re-enlisting and you got to leave soon?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I should re-enlist in the gate room." And it was literally a joke. And he's like, "That would be cool," you know? And I just sat there and I was kind of like, I wonder if I could pull that off. And I literally, and so I was like, well, maybe I'd get a hold of Richard Dean Anderson, maybe, you know? And so I kept brainstorming. I was like, you know who would really do it? Amanda would do it. And I got it in my head, and nobody was going to tell me no. And I got on the internet and I started figuring out how to get a hold of her, and was sending emails. And she was overseas filming or doing something at the time, and she came back, and one of her publicists or something got a hold of her, and I feel horrible because I can't remember the lady's name, but it was 2006.
It's probably Cynthia.
Yes,
Cynthia
it
Simmons.
was.
Yeah. May she
She's the
rest
one
in
that
peace.
she passed away.
Yes, she
Yeah,
did. I loved
and
her.
yeah, she was amazing and totally instrumental in making it all happen. I mean, if it hadn't been for Cynthia, it wouldn't have happened. And she wrote me back, and she's like, Ryan, this is really interesting. Let me talk with Amanda when she gets back, and blah blah blah. So I waited a few weeks. All of a sudden, she's back. She's like, now, can you make this happen? And I'm like, yeah, I was like, sure, why not? And so the main thing was I had to find an officer that could actually sign the paperwork.
Yes.
Like Amanda could host it, but she wasn't a real U.S. Air Force officer, so she couldn't actually swear me in, blah, blah, blah. So years ago in the Navy, there was a guy that had Commander Riker from Star Trek do it. And
Okay. Jonathan Frakes.
He ended up in a magazine with the Navy, and they made it a whole big thing. And I was like, no, I'm keeping this on the down low. I'm just going to do my thing. And, this was like huge deal because we're touring the set and everything. So I'm trying to email the convention and let them know what I'm doing. And it was just a shell game. So finally, I started reaching out to some officers in like the Whidbey Island area in Washington to see if they would be willing to drive into Canada and just somebody for the day. I just kept striking out. So one day I went down to maintenance control to sign for tools, had my Stargate jacket on. I used to wear it every day, just kind of break it in. And Commander May, who's our maintenance material control officer, he was what we call a Mustang. He was prior enlisted and then became an officer. That dude had more medals. I'm sure you got some of the pictures of him there. He was on the Navy shooting team. Like, this guy had stuff I've never even seen before when I met him. And he had a really dry sense of humor. And so,
is he the one who was there to swear you in?
He officiated everything.
Okay.
I signed the official paperwork. And he was a Stargate fan. I didn't know it. So he's like, hey, I hear you're trying to do a re-enlistment. Somehow the word had like got out. I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I might be able to help you out. Well, I came to find out he was transferring to New Orleans before I was even going to do this. He was leaving. And I was like, how's that going to work? And he goes, well, I'll give you my number. Let's keep in touch. Let's see if we can figure this out. So he got involved with the emails, carbon copy Cynthia. He's like, yeah, that man bought his own plane ticket.
Wow.
Flew to Canada, got his own rental car, paid for his own hotel, and he was there for probably about 28 hours. I'm not kidding you. He flew in the night before, walked into the hotel lobby, shook my hand, had his uniform in a bag and a carry-on, and he's like, I'm going to my room. I'll see you in the morning.
Wow.
We did the ceremony the next day. That dude drove back to the airport, flew home.
What a nice guy.
What? Dude, blew me away. And not only, he had just moved and transferred to New Orleans and did all of it off-site from Atlanta. So I was scrambling around trying to get the box done, the flag, everything to surprise her. And I gave her that shadow box. We flew the flag over the base on her daughter's first or second birthday. I don't remember how old her daughter was.
Yeah, she would have been young.
Yeah, so you'd have to March of 06, and whenever she was born, you'd have to do the math. It's been so long, but
what a memory.
It was crazy. And then the official day came. It was supposed to be in the gate room, but then there was some scheduling conflicts. But Amanda's like, nope, we're doing this. And she came straight to the hotel, and they shut down the meet and greet photo thing, whatever, for an hour or two. Some people went and got lunch, and she's like, nope, let's just do this now. And, but the emotions, and I had probably about 20 people in the room. that were friends or people I had even met that weekend. I just kind of grabbed them. I'm like, hey,
Yeah, Dan's in there. I saw a picture of Dan
yeah,
Kim.
Dan was in there.
So
There's a bunch of people. There was, I couldn't even name everybody. I had a cake made, and like I was running around trying to do so much. And Amanda showed up in jeans, cowboy boots, and a black T-shirt of all things.
you
And
could put the jacket over her.
yeah, Colleen grabbed a jacket or something and threw it on her, and like I think I swapped the patches out so the patches
So that they were right.
well, not only they were right, but they were mine, and that way
Ah.
I swapped them off my jacket or something. I can't remember, but and yeah, and then we did it. So Commander May, of course, dry sense of humor. So we get in there, he hands her the oath, and he's like, "All right, you're an actress, you're great at memorizing, so just go ahead and memorize that real quick, and then we'll knock this out." And she's like, "What?" And he's just totally messing with her, and I know what he's doing, and I'm just like, "Oh."
Some people need time to prepare.
And she's like, I'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States, she's reading this, and she's like, "Oh, no." And finally he's like, "Oh, I'm just messing with you, you can read it." He's like, we just normally memorize it as an officer." And she's like, oh my gosh, she was like ready to pass out. And so it was a good tension breaker for everything, and we just did it. I mean, it lasted like a minute and a half, but like the tension in the room, the emotions, just like everything, like I was so nervous. She was like freaking out, and then when we got done, she just hugged me. She hugged me like 3 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember those Amanda hugs. I agree. Was that your last reenlistment?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
I figured it was gonna be, but I wasn't for sure. And but as it turned out, it was. So
All right. That's awesome, man. I want to move a little bit more into some of the customization that you guys do. You sent me a number of photos of tactical vests. What are the is that something that's complicated to tailor to each individual person, especially when you're not seeing them in they're in person with you? What is it that you do, and how do you deal with these things and making sure that they're screen accurate?
well, that's always been the challenge. When I first started out, it was just friends, and I could like meet them at a con and see it and have it in my head. And Johnny Rico was the first guy ever, and he's a big guy like me. And
Wait, like Starship Troopers?
well, it's his nickname.
Okay, I was gonna say you're not gonna get that one over on me.
But that's what he went by online. But
Okay.
Johnny's his first name, and he did a lot of handler stuff for Jason, Joe, and stuff, especially in Chicago. And but we became really good friends. We were the first people to do Atlantis costumes and approached Joe Flanigan in 2007.
Okay.
Joe had never seen costumers. Like, he was like blown away. We walked up in full grays, full tack gear, and he was like,
You guys are the real deal. Yeah.
"Oh yeah," he was blown away. Well, then I showed him my active duty ID card, and I said, "I kind of do this for real." he's like, "That's awesome."
And you come and do it on the weekends.
Yeah. And yeah, Joe was blown away. He was just like, he was completely so. As season 3 was starting to film, he gave us a tip. He goes, "Well," he whispered to me and Johnny, he's like, "Well, we're going all black." That's the only thing he told me. So immediately I'm like, what? We had to wait for the first episode to come out, and then they didn't even do it till like the 3rd one or something.
Right.
And so the very next con that he was at, I showed up, and he didn't show up till Saturday night. He goes out drinking with Momoa. They get all smashed, and Sunday morning they've got the meet and greet. And he's like, you could tell he was just hungover. He was just like, they were rough. They were out all night. And he shows up at like 8 a.m. to this Sunday brunch thing, and I'm in full black. Exactly.
Thanks for the tip.
Yep. And he walks up to me. He looks at me, looks head to toe, just shook his head, walked off, and never said a word. He knew. He was just like, oh, guy's got problems.
Tell me about some of your clients. You've had adults, you've had kids.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me
I
some
think
stories.
I think in one of my videos, I said I've done everything from outfitted everything from a 10-year-old to, I think I said 50 at one point, but now I'm 52. So probably into the 60s. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I've had some emotional clients, things that really I wasn't expecting.
Like
I've
what?
had well, Christmas of 2012 was like December 7th, literally. I got an email from this guy, and he was like a CPA out in Colorado, and David was his name, and he had this like 9-year-old son, and he writes me this email. He's like, I want to get my kid a Stargate costume for Christmas. And I'm like, bro, it's December 7th. I'm like, really? And I was like, if we're gonna do this, we need to do it now.
Right now.
Like today, I'm ordering parts. Like, what are we doing here? And he had ordered some cheap China knockoff jacket.
Oh, no. You're going to do this right.
From eBay. Well, I really couldn't do much for the kid, even with the resources I had at the time, and especially that last minute. So I said, send me a jacket. Let me at least they literally had the wrong Velcro on it. Like, it was the opposite side. It was a mess. And so he sent him the jacket. He sent me the jacket. I redid that, put good patches on it, fixed it, adjusted a few things, sent it back. Then I did the task of taking a Black Hawk medic vest and stripping it down to fit a 10-year-old kid. And I'd never done anything like that in my life.
Is that Matthew?
Yes.
Okay, I've got him on right now. He looks good.
Oh, it came out, and being all black, it kind of blended nice, and it was a little big on him still, but I knew this kid, he's like 10, he's going to grow like a weed, and I didn't want it to just last a year or two. So I left it a little big so he could grow into it and then start expanding it. So, as he got older, it'd still work. But I'd never went that deep. And I did it literally in like a week and a half. Like, I
wow.
banged it, shipped it. I think I shipped it around December 14th.
So he got it for Christmas.
He did. And then the dad wrote me like this review for my site, and it literally almost brought me to tears, because I knew this whole family now, after talking with his dad, and that, like, they sat down every Friday night, and made popcorn and watched Stargate together.
This was their thing. I can relate. Believe me.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the things that you did with your family, I know about. And it really touched me. And then later I found out, I believe his wife got cancer. And
she
went on to beat that. And just, the family went through so much. And just this continual thing. And then later, I have this big picture of actually Amanda behind the green screen. It's big famous one where she's shooting the P90, and there was a guy on eBay selling these really big prints. They're like 36 by whatever, and I bought 2, and I was going to Maryland, and I knew I was going to see her, so I stood in line for like 2.5 hours, but I wanted to surprise this kid, so I had the second one signed for him.
For Matthew?
Yeah.
Ah.
What I did is, and they were really bad phones even back then, in like 2012. I asked Amanda, I said, can I take a real quick video, and she's like, oh yeah. Like, half the time she wouldn't even let me pay for my autographs. There's numerous times like she was like, no. I'm like, no, I'm paying, and I'd always pay.
It's a nice gesture. Yeah.
Yeah. I just
even the suggestion.
Don't need the hassle with the handlers and accounting, and no. And so we took a real quick video, and she's like, hi, Matthew. And then my buddy Shane, you'll see in some of the pictures, he snapped a picture of me leaning over the table while she's signing it.
Mm.
I sent it all to David and then rolled it up, and I said, I got this print for you. He's like, what do I owe you? And I said, just, you can pay me for the print, whatever. I wasn't trying to make money. He goes, no, let me send you some money for your time. I said, well, I was getting one done too. I said, I was standing in line. But
yeah, exactly.
I wanted
this is not totally altruistic.
Yeah, I was like, but he told me that kid went in his bedroom and played that video about 700 times.
Of course he did. Absolutely.
You know? And it was literally like 5 seconds. He's like, "Hi, Matthew."
The kid's getting into it is awesome. I've got Sam up here now.
Yeah, he came to me. That was July of 17, I believe. And he started emailing me. And I could tell he was younger by the way he was talking. And so finally I was like, "Well, how old are you?" And I think he said he was like 16 or something. I said, "All right." And he's talking about buying like a tack vest and
he's going all in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like,
yeah.
I'm going to need to talk to your mom. And he's like,
dude, you're not even old enough to own a credit card.
Yeah. I was like, you have PayPal or, are we trading, baseball cards? What are we doing here? And I was like, these things are hundreds of dollars. And I didn't even feel right about charging this kid full price. Like I did. I felt bad. I was like, this kid's 16. Like I'm thinking back when I was 16, I couldn't even hardly get a job, and so I got his mom on the phone. She goes, "Yeah, he's been saving his allowance. He's been working. He's been saving money. He can do this." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm just covering my bases." And she gave him full permit. So I cut him a heck of a deal. But he came back later. He got a full flight suit and everything. And
wow.
I was like, okay. But just to see these young kids, I mean, that was 2017 and to be 16 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, do that math. I mean, well, when the show was out where he was born.
If I'm going to spend, I know that's the thing, but if I'm going to spend that much money on something, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm done growing for the most part, at least vertically, maybe not sideways.
Right.
Before I spend that much money, because I'm just going to have to buy it again. So if it's something that I want to continue with, otherwise it's only going to fit a version of me that's only going to last this long temporarily. So,
well, and that's the great thing about as we talk about vests and stuff later is they are adjustable. But you said how do you size people? It's if they're guys like me and you, we're not small dudes. And Johnny wasn't a small dude either. So I actually had to extend his vest because we get so big in the chest and the stomach area.
Exactly. Yes.
It raises the vest this way on your shoulders. So then your belt doesn't hit in the right spot. So I got to the point of these bigger guys, I had to split the vest at the top, put in a spacer, and drop the vest back down so your belt's hitting you in the correct position. And I got a 52-inch chest. I'm not a small dude. I'm 230 pounds. And I got up to 268 at one time when I was injured and retiring from the military.
Yep.
Eating too much.
Of course.
Depression. Just, pile it all on there. And yeah. And when I got to the point where I couldn't even zip up my modified vest, I was like, okay, we got a problem.
There's something I need to do about this.
Yeah, that's not.
I get it.
And I learned to kind of look at people, and that was my job too, as a parachute rigger. I had pilots walk in their first day and I'd be like, I hold their hand up and, I'm like, all right, you're a size 10. I look at their boots. I'm like, what are you, 9? And you're 42 long. And they're like, how do you do that? Oh, sir, I've been doing it for 18 years.
Yeah. You take away some
your
things.
Underwear size at this point. And, but in person, it's way easier for me. When I'm talking to somebody on email, I'm like, okay. And I send them a little picture. I'm like, you need to measure here and here and here. And then hope they don't screw up the measurement. But once I get the shoulder to the waist and can kind of judge, and I've done enough of them now that I can kind of just glance at it and be like, okay, I got it in my head where we need to be, and I've done hundreds of them. So it's just, but now we're to the point where you couldn't get the vests anymore. So then Blackhawk changed it and they came out with the Elite. I think you have
so they were no longer being manufactured.
They stopped making the regular vest and they went to this modified one, which was supposed to fit more people for larger, which is great, but it doesn't look right. It had extra clips. Different. The pockets were different slightly. The snaps on the radio pockets, they were on the outside and then they went on the inside and back to the outside, and just the Velcro kept switching, and just, and then when they went to the Elite, the back panel completely changed, and it switched to this Molly setup, and they don't look right. They're not screen accurate.
So what do you do? What do you do if the
Started
manufacturer? I'm assuming Blackhawk was the supplier for the show.
Yeah, they didn't. They weren't official.
Okay.
So anytime, like, especially you get in Atlantis, where Weir had her Gen 3, Blackhawk was actually embossed onto the rifle pad, but the studio covered it up, which is a strip of webbing.
Yeah.
So so they weren't gonna deal with the
No.
rights or whatever.
Yep, exactly. You're in the Pegasus galaxy. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So
The only things are allowed are like North Face and Dell.
yeah, exactly. I don't know how all those little contracts work or whatever. I just make stuff. But they then came out with this, what they called the Elite, which we coined the Gen 4, the fourth generation of this vest, and they're totally wrong. So I started doing what I call a conversion. So I would buy another old Blackhawk vest. It didn't matter what model, because you just needed the back panel, and I'd whack it. And I cut it at the shoulders, pull off what I needed, throw away or throw it in my pile of parts.
You were kit bashing.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, and just start. And it's about 4.5, 5 hours to modify, to put it all back together. And then depending on, do I need to make it smaller? Do I need to make it bigger? Then you're getting into sizing, and then if it's a girl that wants a Carter vest, hers was even more modified. Right. I think they did it because of her pregnancies and everything. So Amanda's was cut in the back and trimmed, and they used different size grommets. I had to buy a whole nother size grommet. And
what's a grommet?
It's the little black metal things that are on the sides. The new vest had straps. They didn't even have grommets with cords anymore.
Okay.
So that's a whole nother thing you got to rip apart, and you got to adjust the pockets, and
it's a lot of work, man.
It's about 5 hours, so it's not cheap, So you're either buying a super expensive rare vest and paying, $350, $400, $500. I mean, the real ones were going in auction for $5 to $8, and then if you could find a real one out there, they were just as expensive. Or I had to buy 2 vests, one at $117, and then another one somewhere between $30 and $100. And then that's just parts. Now you got to tack on 5 hours of labor. So now you've reached the same price level for
at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah, so this company is not my friend by any means. I use all of their stuff because that's what was used. But yeah, we're not friends.
One of the things that you've been known for is screen accurate patches. Now this is tricky. Now, do you have by any chance examples of these?
I didn't send you anything.
Okay, like in person? Do you by any chance have any nearby?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of them are right here.
Is there any way you could bring them on?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a last minute thing that I asked. I've not given him any opportunity to plan for this. So, but I was like, I've got a series of the patches downstairs that are authentic. Ryan, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm going to go and get mine. So there's going to be no one on screen for a second here. Because I've got production used ones. And then, sorry everybody, I've got production used ones, and I want to be able to A/B compare with the ones that you've made. So, which one, before you show it, which one are you going to show first?
Actually, doing one of my newest ones, which was the Daedalus.
Okay, so Daedalus. These.
Oh yeah, you got your frame.
Are the ones that are screen used here.
Yep.
So let's see yours.
So this is the screen used one, just like in your.
Oh, so you do have a screen used one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There's my.
Pull it back just a little. I mean, how do you do that? Is there a computer program that you use to get the threading?
It's a lot. I have a patch guy that puts up with me, and so I mean, even just doing this, you'll see size changes. You know, you'd be like, oh, it's not exact. Well, it's pretty close. I do clean up the fonts. I often say my patches are better than the real ones because they literally are. Production.
They may be higher quality, yeah.
They are. And
also 20 years hence, too, they're probably going to be made superior. So
it's how far you clean them up that where do you take that? It's like when you get into Star Wars costuming and you're replicating stuff from the 70s that were, wooden chest boxes and that type of stuff.
Inferior quality, even though it's screen used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of you get into, so the Icarus one, the text down here was just horrible because when you start printing, even my shirt, that type of embroidery, it's not clean like you would think it would be.
Where's Icarus? Oh, there it is. Yeah. The I see what you're saying.
See, like the R and force, how it's on yours it's slightly lower.
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah, absolutely. And this is the female size. The female sizes were smaller. So, but you're absolutely right. Do you have SG patches, Earth patches to show?
So when you
let me see this here. Yeah.
So when you get into that gradient and stuff, but I really cleaned up the text and I make it a little sharper and a little cleaner.
So the one that you just pushed forward, is that screen used or are those both yours?
No, this one's screen. You can see the phrase and they're always a little more beat up. But,
I see. Okay.
And finding the exact blue or it's tough. You can only get so close to it. And
there are thousands of shades.
Oh yeah. And it's tough on here to especially see that.
Yeah.
That gradient, but I don't know where all the Earth patches are, but the SG1 that was a whole mess in itself because there was literally
the elements of the chevron.
Well, there was 5 different versions too.
Well, it ran 10 years.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised there weren't 10.
There was the pilot.
Yes.
This is the replica. I never had a real one, but Justin helped me with this. He had one. And
okay.
We got this one. This one's pretty much perfect.
So that's from the Chulak mission.
Well, it's the pilot too. That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, the original patches were black, and then as you went into some, even in the Knox episode, there's one shot where they're all standing there, and like one of them has the black number, and the rest of them have the silver number. So
okay,
there was continuity errors. There was there was a lot going on. So both of these, I believe, were screen used as well. But you can see down here towards season 9 and 10, the lines got a little tighter. There's videos on my YouTube channel about it where we break down different things.
Okay.
But it's just it's trial and error and comparison, and like I do all my own art. Like I don't copy anybody's stuff. I've always done my own stuff, and
I'll put the YouTube link. Your website is on the right now underneath the description, but I'll add the YouTube link after we're done so people can go and see it. USS Hammond.
This was one I definitely put some time and work into. This is the screen used one. You can tell because they always had like the cheesy production Velcro half the time.
Yep.
And but
tilt them for me.
Yeah, to get that perfect.
Well, you've got the when you turn it, the lightning bolts and the stars pop You know, there's a
Yeah.
texture there.
Yeah,
So
there is. And even in the real ones, but a lot of times I would enhance that too. I would get a little more, but like the red lines in these weren't great. They're just, so I might go a little bit bolder just to get them to
I see.
pop, and sometimes they're a little crooked or, not quite straight, and the text, you get those variations. So I try to clean it up and make it just a little bit nicer.
Can I
I try.
devil's advocate for it
Yeah,
for a minute there?
absolutely.
Part of me would think it is not our job to make them nicer.
Right.
It's our job to make them the same.
Well,
What do you say to that?
the way I look at it is there's the way it looks in real life, and then there's the way it looks on screen. So when you're at a con, you're in real life. It needs to look as good as it looks on screen. Now, the camera may add 10 pounds, but I'll tell you, it cleans up a lot.
This is true. It's absolutely true.
The way stuff, the colors, the way things look on screen, they're completely different in real life.
So you're trying to balance the aesthetic of what you're holding in your hand along with what was the end product on the camera after coloring, after everything.
Yeah.
That is
you got post
fairly inarguable.
You got post production, you've got cleanup, you've got, they do a lot of movie magic. I've stood there. I mean, and I've told this story a couple of times, but the first scene we shot in Green Lantern with Ryan Reynolds, and I know he bashes it every chance he gets, but I was put in charge of actually almost directing that scene. Martin Campbell turned to me and he's like, "All right, how should we shoot this?" I'm like looking at my boss like, "Why is the director talking to me? I'm nobody." And I was like, "Isn't that your job, sir?" And he's laughing. He goes, "Well, that's why you're here." And so the first literally thing I did on the movie was directing Ryan in the ejection sequence out of the F-35. And he's hanging there in front of a blue screen and doing his thing. And I literally experienced the movie magic moment in person. I'm sitting in a director's chair next to Martin Campbell. We're looking at the monitor. I'm looking over the top of it, watching Ryan flail around this harness I just spent 3 days fixing, and because they didn't get it right. And he looks like a complete idiot. Like he's, and I'm like, and then I look through the monitor and it looks totally legit. And I look up, I'm like, what? And I look down. I did this like 3 times and it just clicked. I was like,
framing, lighting,
that's what they're talking about.
Background, it all comes together. And then the performer in front of it. So I completely get it, man. That is really cool.
The first take was horrible. And Ryan just wasn't in it. And him and I had a conversation about skydiving because he almost died. He went skydiving once and he almost died. So me being a parachute rigger, I was like, I kind of tucked that back in my brain one day for a moment of awkward silence. And I pulled it out one day and I said, "Didn't you almost die?" And he goes, "Oh my gosh." And I was like his best friend after that. So we just really bonded in his trailer that one day. And then we were walking to set. And I'm like, "Do you even know what you're shooting today?" And he goes, "No, not really." I was like, "All right."
They'll hand me the sides and we'll do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So we got him all in the harness and he gets strapped in. And Martin gives him a little pet talk and everything. And he's like, "Action." And Ryan's like, "Yeah." And it looks horrible. And I'm like, ugh. So Martin's like, yells cut. He goes and gives him another pep talk. As Martin walks away, I walked over to Ryan. I said, "Dude." And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Skydiving." He goes, yeah, I got it." And that's all it took. The next take was perfect. Full panic mode. Like he was flailing around, looked like a total, way overacting. But when I looked in the monitor,
That's what he needed.
that was what was in the movie.
That's cool, man.
Take number 2. We did about 6 takes, and after the second one, I just turned to him. I'm like, "You already got it." And he goes, "You think?" I said, "Yep." And
That's
we
cool.
got all done. They unhooked it him. They unhooked it him. They
They
unhooked
unhooked
it.
him.
And I walked over there to like get his helmet from him or something. And he literally put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, "Thanks. I needed that."
There you go.
And I said, "Take two." I said, that's in the movie.
That's it. That's cool.
They rang the bell and everybody tore everything apart. And and my boss walks over and he puts his hand on my back. He goes, "You just directed your first Hollywood sequence." I said, I was shaking. I was like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" I'm just making stuff. And now I'm sitting next to the director. It was surreal. It absolutely was.
Your attention to detail isn't just with costuming; it's also with some of the electronics. The Lantean Scanners are a story. They're HP Palm Pilots underneath, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is that right?
HP IPAC 5550.
That's what's in here. So,
Yep.
and then you went.
You have the dummy one though. That's
I do.
Push button light up.
Yes, this is push. It doesn't light up anymore. I need to open this and switch it out. But like little pieces have fallen off, and But you make replicas.
Yep. It took us 7 years to finish that.
Wow. Why? Why so long? Getting it right or hardware?
Before I would sell them, and they were good enough.
Okay.
It took 7 years.
Okay.
Finally found. I don't know how we did, but a buddy of mine ended up with the master. He had literally the metal master. So what you're holding up, we had an aluminum CNC version of it. So then we were able to cast off of that and make new molds. And then as we literally figured out how to do the silicone and fog it and put enough in to make it foggy and not clear and under pressure and get all the bubbles out. Remington, he's
Remington Phillips, yeah, SG1 props.
Old master.
He is indeed. This is true.
I see your Kino up there on that top shelf.
That is screen used.
Is it?
It is.
Yeah, he's mastered those. They're beautiful.
He has.
And, but once we got our hands on the master, then I knew for sure we had it, because I had all the electronic stuff pretty much worked out. Now it's just come down to batteries, because the batteries are getting so
they're getting old. Yeah,
and
they're turning into Destiny.
I got my hands on a couple last year that were brand new in the package. I don't know how, but a customer of mine found a contact over in like Germany or something, and he was in the UK, and I dropped a bunch of money and bought some more, and then but they've literally taken me like years to put them together.
I would think at a certain point you'll be able to get something going where you can create newer batteries, or have someone create newer batteries that you can fit in there.
Go to
and
Consumer Electronics show in Vegas last year and got a few contacts. Remington and I are actually working on trying to basically take a stock battery, pop it, and replace the inner cells themselves.
Yeah, there'll be workarounds, especially with 3D printing. You can fit, as long as you can get a smaller battery. Yeah, there'll be workarounds for sure. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah,
and not blow up your fingers.
Yeah, well, and they're so temperamental too. Like if you don't keep them charged, like you got to do a hard reset every time and like fire it back up, and it's just they're a pain in the butt. All the information's on the chip, so it doesn't matter. But it resets to 2003 or whatever every time.
When the thing was, like Evil Kenny and a lot of these guys, they needed it for 2 or 3 takes, and then that was it. Whereas you're looking at creating essentially a consumer product that people can show off at events and things like that. They weren't necessarily designed to do that.
No, and we have all the original files too.
Yeah.
So it's I've got all the Wraith popping up, and that we've got 3D versions of the city and everything that came off laptops that were sold off later. And I put as much on the chip as I can.
That's awesome, dude. Really cool. Where can people get one?
I got to try to get a few more, but
okay.
Yeah, if they're patient, that is a primo collect. Like you need to be tech prop savvy and have patience, and like, yeah, they're not a novice collector thing. and now I sell them with a Pelican case and everything. I mean,
Well, I'd love to show one off on the show if you could get one to me.
they're not cheap. So.
All right. Uh, you ready for another Stargate? Do you want another Stargate? Do you think that they should not reboot it? What are your thoughts?
I'm so worried about Amazon. I really am.
Okay.
I don't have anything against them, but
Then why would you be worried?
Yeah.
Their quality has been hit and miss. Let's just say it.
It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's MGM. It doesn't matter if it's Amazon. It doesn't matter if it's Netflix. I don't care who it is. There's such a disconnect between fandom and, that's why Deadpool is so successful, because Ryan understands the fandom.
Yeah. He knows what people wanted, especially for that IP.
6 months with this guy. He knows what's good and what's not. And to be able to push past all the corporate greed and nonsense, and that's why I'm so frustrated, with some of the choices that were made with MGM over the years. And now Netflix being Amazon being much bigger, it's just more, way too many Chiefs and not enough Indians.
I think it's gonna come down to the IP. If you look at Fallout, I've watched part of it. I haven't watched all of it yet. It's very well done, and that's an IP where they're not saying, okay, here's a specific story, we're going to adapt this story. It's an IP where we've already got the tapestry. We're going to tell a new story in that tapestry. And I think if they could do that with Stargate, I think they may have a winner. But I'm with you. If it's not going to be of quality, I mean, of course, it's going to look great. The money that they throw at it will look great, but the story has to be of substance too, and the characters do too. They can't be skin deep.
My personal feeling is, if Brad is not involved at some level, it's not going to work.
Then don't do it. Okay.
That's my own personal take on it. You have got to have legacy characters and legacy knowledge. Like I could walk on to an Amazon show tomorrow and teach them in a matter of weeks, even how to transition everything. I've already made a PVC patch of SG1. That's what needs to be on the next jacket, is a rubber PVC patch. We're done with embroidery. That I have those type of ideas. You can come up with another vest, you can update, whatever. But there's got to be enough fan service to connect those dots. It's plug Deadpool again. Amazing movie. Not for everybody, but to have that fan service, to have those moments to where you really break stuff down and you can tie in a Madonna song from 10 years ago from a previous reference to
and it works.
You've got to be able to do that. So the only people that can do that are people like Brad, Robert, whatever, that have the knowledge. I could walk in their costume place easy and tell them what to do. But again, there's such a disconnect. Are they smart enough to go out and to find your subject matter experts?
But also, you want to do your own thing too. And I understand that. I understand the desire that if someone has selected you to do something, it's not, I'm not going to be like, okay, what they did, let's continue that per se. I also want to bring my own ideas to it. So, I get it. I absolutely get that.
There has to be a flow of continuity, though.
That's true. I agree with that 100%. Yep. All right, man. Ryan, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your stories. Is there anything you're working on right now? Anything that we need to keep an eye out for? I've linked your website and the YouTube channel below.
There'll be 1,000 people already asking about jackets, but I'm working on it, man. After I lost my jacket gown during COVID, I got one more obstacle I just can't get over with a fabric issue. And but if we can, I'm hoping to spool back up. And there's probably 150 people on the waiting list right now. But
wow. Okay, so
it's
you're
not
not
that
hurting for it. All right.
I'm not that I'm not trying.
It's a supply thing. I get it.
It is. It's tough, and
Absolutely.
there's new rules and new things and this red tape that you would not believe, and it's frustrating. So,
Well, you keep fighting the good fight, my friend.
I'm
And I
trying.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. Let me wrap up the show here. I'll be back with you in a second.
All right.
Ryan Nixon, everyone from Stitches Loft. His details are in the description below. Appreciate you all tuning in. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, click like. It makes a difference with the channel and will help us continue to grow. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this episode will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the Dial the Gate YouTube channel. My appreciation to my moderating team. Anthony came in today to pinch hit on this episode, so I really appreciate you, sir. Tracy, Summer, Jeremy, Marsha, you guys make the channel possible. Thanks to my producer, Linda Gate Gabber Fury, Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web, who keeps dialthegate.com up and running. There will be a few more episodes before I wrap up season 4 this fall. Thinking about going into November, we'll see. Not far beyond like the first half. There's definitely some shows that I want to bring to you guys, but I've had some out-of-town work in addition to being on a little bit of a vacation, so it's all flowing in the right direction. Let me see here. Just a second. Ryan, Anthony wanted to know what other shows have you done content for, not just Stargate?
Ran for 2 seasons.
Revolution. Okay.
That was when the power went out on the whole planet.
Yes. Okay.
I was highly involved with the American flag that was on the Patriots, that you'll see in season 2.
Okay.
And that was a big. But yeah, I've done. I did Green Lantern. That was my. Well,
I mean, I think they were referring to fan costumes. What have you supported in that regard?
That's a big list.
So okay, so there's a lot. So Star Wars,
yeah,
I've seen pictures of Star Wars.
Dead hat. I do some X-wing harnesses. I do, the Captain Marvel flight suits. There's. I've done some one-offs too. People have approached me. I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. Whatever.
Okay. That's cool, dude. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode. We're going to be bringing up Wormhole Extremists later on, actually in less than an hour, so we're going to get over to that. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and I'll see you on the other side.